right, shall I kick us off?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, welcome everyone who's here. We're so glad to have you for this wonderful session. I'm Katie Jacobson. I'm a K through 5 math interventionist and assisting here with All Learners Network. Just a couple notes to get us started. Just as you've heard before, a big thank you to the Vermont AOE for making this conference free to educators. We're really grateful to them for that. As you heard, if you attended the keynote, we have some social media accounts. And if you visit these accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we also have a new TikTok, which has the same handle as the Instagram. There's a little social media challenge going on with a couple of easy steps that you can enter to win a $25 Amazon gift card. So feel free to check us out on social media. That would be awesome. If you are using social media, you can use this hashtag I'm putting in the chat, ALNCon21. And you can also tag this. I'll put our other tags in the chat as well. Just a couple other sessions that are coming up that we wanted to let folks know about. We have our All Learners Network website where you can register for courses. There's a link to that. We have a bunch of 2-hour after school workshops from 4 to 6 coming up, and some of them are going to be hybrid, virtual, and in person at the same time. So that gives you some flexibility to attend. And also some full day professional development at our fantastic All Learners Network Learning Center, which if you haven't heard about that, it's a beautiful space, great day to spend a day of learning. Some of those are sponsored by the AOE, which means they're free to attend. And we also have some all virtual sessions to offer as well. If you go to our events page, I'll link that in the chat. If you scroll down a bit, you are able to see which ones specifically are sponsored by the Vermont Agency of Education. All right, so to introduce Erin Oliver, our fantastic facilitator. Erin's a K through 6 math specialist at Grand Isle and one of our wonderful All Learners Network facilitators, and she also coordinates our math menu materials. If you haven't checked those out, that's definitely a great place to start. She has a great asynchronous math menu course you can take online as well. So Erin, you can kick us off with our course here on 3 fast JamBoard routines.
Awesome, thank you. That was a fabulous introduction, I love it. This is just a reminder of our kind of agreements together. So I'll pause for you to read them for a minute. Anyone have any issues with any of these? Awesome, moving on. Same Zoom etiquette as what you saw in the keynote. I also don't want to use the raise the hand feature. We're too small a group. You can just unmute or pop something in the chat. Okay, I put this slide because I really like remembering that All Learners Network is trying to house the stuff that we do inside of a bigger system. So the JamBoard session that we're talking about is really a main lesson tool and strategy. I'm going to test out using it in menu this year. And so I'll talk about how I'm planning on doing that. But it's really in this instructional opportunities. But it's part of a bigger idea that we believe problem solving and inquiry-based instruction is really essential to students becoming strong mathematicians. So this is kind of our agenda today, and Katie's going to actually pop a link into a Google Doc that's the agenda. In that document, you're going to want to have that one pulled up on your computers, because in that document is going to be a ton of links and resources that we'll explore together. And we probably won't have time to explore all that I linked in there. So it will be a resource for you moving past this workshop as well. So first, so this routine was inspired by the problem introduction protocol, which is, we wrote a blog post about it a long time ago. I have linked the blog post in the agenda, but the date was 2018. I was like, oh my gosh, that feels so long ago. But it's a really helpful way to give access to more students and their problem solving. And 3-Act tasks have some of those elements already built in. But I kind of was playing around with like, how do I use elements of this problem introduction protocol and this amazing resource of 3-Act tasks? And there's so many incredible mathematicians that put out really engaging ones. How do I kind of like combine the two? And so we'll start with those, and then we'll actually experience what I created as students we're actually going to do a 3-Act task together. It's one of the really challenging ones, so you probably won't get it right, just like my students didn't, and that's totally okay. Then I did this a lot last year because it solved a bunch of problems for me. So I was running small groups of students that had to be super far apart at the 6th grade level, right? It was the recommendation at that point was 6 feet. So I was like, how do I really get them to talk about and share their work so far away when we used to be all like huddled around the same paper? So I thought JamBoard was just probably a tool that could help me deal with some of the safety restrictions that were in place last year that could still make it feel like I had some strong instruction. Like I felt like discourse and discussion took a huge hit last year. And this was like part of my trying to get it fixed. But also like, I just never knew, are we going to go back to virtual, or like and if we do go back to virtual, I want them to be really good at this tool because I think it allows us to have more collaboration. So that's kind of where it started from. So you can read the full blog post. It's pretty interesting, but there's really just 4 elements to a problem introduction protocol. And again, this is just increasing the access, reducing the obstacles for students to be able to start in on the problem solving. So reading the problem together, that actually doesn't matter in 3-Act tasks because they're all videos. So that one you really won't see show up in the routine. You will see showing up in the routine, what are they trying to figure out? And in 3-Act tasks, what's really awesome is they actually are designed for the students to kind of figure out what is the big question we could answer given this little teaser of a video that we just watched. So that one is also kind of built into the routine. Then we really talk about what does the answer look like, but we don't say that question exactly. We talk about like, what are the units that this answer is going to have? So like with my 1st graders, I joke like, is it 5 monkeys, 5 bananas, 5 raisins, 5 stars, 5 moons? Like, what is it? And so really knowing that when I'm talking about this number, it's in relation to this problem. So it's dominoes, or it's time, or it's seconds, or it's milliseconds or hundredths of seconds. And the estimation is really, can you, given what you already have thought about, not only do you know where a ballpark range is, but do you know like this would be way too high and this would be way too low of an answer? And often there are some probing questions that can pull that out, but the estimation page in the JamBoard really helps to kind of set that part of it up. And then at first my JamBoard didn't have a strategies brainstorm page. And then I reread the problem introduction protocol and I was like, oh yeah, that's obviously the part I'm missing. So before students go into taking on the problem solving on their own, there's a moment where you pause and say, so what strategies do you think we could use to approach this problem? And there's a really important like teacher neutrality that happens at this moment. So if a student says multiplication and you weren't expecting multiplication to be one of the strategies that students could use, you would still say, sure, multiplication might be something you try. Teacher neutral. I'm not going to share that I don't think that's a strategy that will get you there. what you're doing is processing strategies you know how to do, and you're thinking maybe that one will be relevant to this problem. I'm not going to tell you yes it is relevant to this problem or no it's not. That's part of the problem solving process. But I do want students who don't have a starting place, I do want them to have a place to look up and be like, oh, well, maybe I will try multiplication because that is a strategy that we talked about, right? Even if it's not the one that's going to get them there, at least there's a list, because again, I'm trying to increase access into the problem. At least there's something that I can gives me kind of a starting place. So not all four, the last three elements of the problem introduction protocol are really going to show up in this JamBoard routine. And the first one just doesn't show up because you don't read the problems. Any questions or comments about the problem introduction protocol, or PIP if you want to shorten it? Cool. So I have to say that the part of why I love 3-act tasks is there is an insane amount of them available for free on the internet. So these are just 6 of some pretty famous 3-act tasks authors. They have either blog posts or websites that contain a bunch of them. They're not the only ones, but there is such a plethora that I felt like I could keep going. I could get a year's worth of 3-act tasks if I wanted to. And if you haven't played around with this resource before, these are some of the 3-act task authors that you could start with. Anyone have anyone else that is a go-to for them? Just with like a thumbs up, I've seen a 3-act task before. Thumbs to the side, I've heard about it, but I've never seen and tried one. Thumbs to the side, heard about it, never tried one. Thumbs down, like this is a totally new math thing to me. Okay, great. So you will actually, these 6 people are great places to start exploring the 3-act tasks. The ones we're going to take on are for 5th and 6th graders, but there are they go all the way down to kindergarten. So the organization of the 3-act task is pretty important. So it has an act 1 that is always super engaging. It's like a 10-second or 20-second or 30-second video. It's so short and you're left kind of being like, huh? Or what? Or whoa. Like what is the content of the actual videos themselves are so engaging because they're real life. So it pulls everyone in right away. And then the JamBoard has a bunch of pages designed to kind of just get us talking about just that really engaging, perplexing video that we just watched. So we'll do act 1 as a workshop all together on this JamBoard, like I do it all together with my students in our class. Then act 2 is an information and solution seeking. So before we go into act 2, I always ask the students, and I will ask you today, what information do you think you would need, or what information do you think the person who wrote this task is going to give us in act 2 so that we're able to solve it? And often they figure it out. Often they're like, she has to tell me how many, I'm trying to think of one, or like the Pringle Ringle problem. She has to tell me how many Pringles were in the jar to start with at first. And I have to know how many was left over to be able to figure out how many were used in the Pringle Ringle. And students are very good at figuring out what information they might need to solve the problem. And because they think about it ahead of time, when they're given that information, they already have a starting point of how they might choose to use it. But Act 2 is really the author of the task provides you with some information that could lead you in the direction of a solution. Finally, Act 3 is really a solution discussion, and you get the solution reveal. So you get to watch the full version of the Act 1. The Act 1 video is just like the very beginning. And then Act 3, you get to watch the full video and see the answer revealed at the end. Because these are real life problems, sometimes the Act 2 information is enough to solve it accurately and exactly, but often the Act 2 information is enough to get you a close answer, but not an exact answer. And I love that aspect of 3X tasks too, because I'm trying to get students not focused on the answer and more focused on the problem solving, right? Like I don't actually, when we do, and you'll see in the student work of these JamBoards, most of the time, we don't get to an accurate answer. We don't get the exact answer that's revealed in Act 3, but there's so much problem solving and sense making that happens in trying to get a close answer that students start to value the process of problem solving over the process of producing a right answer. And they start to get less down on themselves about not getting an accurate answer because they're starting to appreciate the complexity of these problems. So just pop in the chat, why would I use this strategy, this 3-act task strategy in a main lesson? Given what I just kind of overviewed, what's one thing that you think would happen with students, or one thing that you heard that is a good reason to use this strategy? So why would you use this strategy? Just pop it in the chat. What might be the point of using it? Engages, excites kids right away, brings a lot of math language. The focus is on the process, not the solution. It's a motivating way to develop problem-solving strategies. My job is done. More problems with lots of variety, approachable problems. Yeah, awesome. Okay, I agree with everyone so far. It helps you explain your math thinking. Yep. A lot of teamwork and discussion comes out of this as well, but every single one of your answers are spot on. So I think we're at the place where we're actually going to do one. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Oops, stop share. And you are going to want to go into part 3. On part 3 of the agenda, there's a, oh, no, I'm sorry, not yet. Let's watch Act 1. So you will have to open up the JamBoard in part 3. There's a link to a JamBoard in part 3, and you will have to open that up because everyone is actually going to participate on the JamBoard itself. The reason I'm doing this is it will get you a chance to play around with JamBoard as well if you haven't used the tool before. And I'm going to pull up Act 1 video. The JamBoard that we're going to take on or the task that we're going to take on today is called dominoes. So I'm going to share my screen again so you guys can see Act 1, and then we'll, I guess I'll share my screen for our JamBoard that we're doing as well, even though you could be in it and see it. Okay, gonna play around with some dominoes. Everyone can see that? Great. Okay, super fast. This Act 1 is super fast. I'll replay it so you can. Okay, one more time. And I want you to think about a question you have. Okay. So now you should be in this JamBoard. And I want you to use this sticky note feature. So you can pull up a sticky note And I want you to put the question that came to your mind. And if you didn't have a question, that's fine. But if you had a question that came to your mind when you watched those dominoes, go ahead and pull up a sticky note and put it right on the JamBoard. And if you don't have a question, you can also, yeah, that's a great question. You can also see if you can come up with a sticky of something you noticed in the video. So the questions we have so far, how long did it take to set up? Such a great question. I'm wondering that. How many dominoes are set up? Why are they in that configuration? How long will it take for all the dominoes to fall? The dominoes are arranged in a curvy line. Yeah, why? I'm curious why they did the curve as well. Will the dominoes tip something larger over? Oh, like some of those crazy tracks you see on the internet. I noticed there were less than 1,000 dominoes. I think I agree with that. Any other wonderings or noticings? Did they have to try this many times to get it set up? I noticed it was on the floor. Yeah, one of my students, she was spending Wednesdays building domino things, and she shared in this, the question about like, how long did it take to set up was one that came up with my students. And she had this opportunity to be like, yeah, it's really frustrating when one domino knocks all of them over. And she developed a strategy where she would move certain dominoes from her setup as she was going, so that if one fell over, it wouldn't knock the whole setup down. It would only knock a chunk down. And I thought that was such an awesome strategy. All right, so the next part of, so all of these questions are really interesting. The setup one, I wish we were going to answer that, how long it took them, but we're not. There is one question that we are going to answer today, and it's how long will it take for all the dominoes to fall? So hopefully we get to, I wish they had some information about how long that takes to set up, but we don't. We're definitely going to figure out how long it takes them to all fall. So I want you to think for a minute about, based on what you saw, what would your guess be? What would your estimate be? Wait a minute. I removed a part of this. So sorry, before you make your guess, I'm wondering, can anyone share an estimate that they think would just be like too outrageous? There's no way that the dominoes would take this amount of time, and it can be way too short a time or way too long a time. Anyone?
Do you want this on a sticky or in the chat?
Great question. Why don't we put on stickies, pop in either one that would be too high or one that would be too low. I wonder how you would read that one. Does anyone know how you would read this decimal amount of seconds? Why are we thinking, okay, yes, so
1/100,000th of a second.
nice, yep. So it sounds like a low amount of seconds we're thinking is too low. I'm wondering, is our too high estimates, are they helpful yet? I ask this to students. So I say, we think about what's too high and too low because we're trying to make a range that we guess in. We're about to make a guess of what we think this is. And the range is like, we're putting an endpoint. I'm not gonna go past this point and I'm not gonna go under this point. So is the 2 hours and 6 months, is that a helpful endpoint? Or someone popped in 10 minutes, they think they can move that endpoint further down. All right, so now I want you to put your name and the on a sticky note, your name and the how much you think it's actually going to take. Nice. 1 minute actually might even be a better end mark for the too high because we know dominoes fall like. So go ahead and put your name on a sticky and be brave, take a guess. I give students the option to guess in a range so that they can say it might be 1 to 2 seconds or 5 to 10 seconds. If they're just taking forever to take a guess, it's because they are worried about being right. And so I say, like, if you aren't right, you can't be right on guesses. Like the likelihood of you getting the exact answer in your estimate is very unlikely. But if it feels better to you, you could put a range. I think it's going to be somewhere between here. Awesome. And then I kind of organize. So it looks like, Dale, you're thinking it's going to take the least amount of time. So we're kind of spread out here like this. Dale kind of thinks it's going to be the shortest amount of time. Amy is thinking it's going to take longest time. So let's see. So we already know what the big question is. How long will if students haven't asked the question in the wonderings part, I ask them, what do you think the big question is that we're going to take on? You haven't asked it yet. But if they asked it like you guys did, yeah, that's the one we're going to take on. I'm not going to like pretend that I didn't have the question we were going to take on ahead of time. I do. I still care about your questions that you generated ahead of time. What information would you need to solve this problem? Go ahead and put a sticky in that you think would be helpful to know if you're going to answer this question. How long will it take for the dominoes to fall? What information could the person give me that would be useful to solve this problem with? There's more than one thing that they information that might be provided. We're kind of thinking, what information would I want? So how long was the first video and how many dominoes fell? How many total dominoes are there? Awesome. So I want to push us over to Act 2. And the first image in Act 2 that I want you to take on is this one. What information are they showing us here? Anyone calculate the total? What is the total dominoes? These are rows of 10 or columns of 10. 120, missing this top one. So I think this last column is a 9. Awesome. So we'll say 119 total dominoes. And this is the other piece of information that we'll get. I'm going to watch it again because there might be. So at this point, many students say, whoa, 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 you need to pause the video.
Will you do it one more time?
Yeah. Why do they want me to pause the video? A really important part of them, I don't tell students they really need to figure out how many dominoes are in this video, but at least one student says, wait, I want to know how many is in that line. Right? Because you do it, this time isn't useful unless you know the total number of dominoes. But again, throughout this process, I'm not trying to feed them the information. I'm trying to make them think about, wait, hold on, I need that too. And so you needed the total number of dominoes. You needed that there's 12 in that group and that it takes them about that much time to complete. Based on time, I'm not going to have you guys actually do any of the solving. Any questions on what I modeled so far, what we went through so far in the JamBoard routine? So I'm just going to walk through the next pages of the JamBoard. So at this point, I would say pause. What are some strategies that you could use here? And so again, I'm not going to ask us to keep doing it, but I have you stick in a Post-it, or I'd have a discussion with partners, and then those partners share and I type them in as texts, and you'll see some strategy brainstorms in the student work JamBoards that I've provided. After the strategy discussion, okay, now go to your teams. And in the way I run it, each team has their own JamBoard page. So you guys would have gone into breakout rooms and done some of the work. I'm stopping us because I want you to see the students' work samples as well. And now you're in Act 2, you're gonna use that information, 119 dominoes, 12 of them fell, 73/100ths of a second, and you're gonna figure out how, using that information, can you answer this big question? How long will it take the dominoes to fall? And they would work on paper, sometimes teams would work on their own separately and then come together in discussion. But the goal was, by the end of Act 2, and Act 2 sometimes takes several days. It could take a couple of days of students problem solving, and that's okay. This is partly why I want to play around with it in menu, because if a team wants to keep going on their strategy, I want to let them, but I also don't want to take all my main lesson days. So they have to represent their work and thinking on the JamBoard. When I first started this routine, I represented their work and thinking. So they would go do their work on paper and whiteboards, and then I would come around and meet with each group, and they'd have to tell me about their thinking, and I'd show them ways that they could represent what they did up on the JamBoard. This was really important for me because I wanted the quality of the math, the way they showed their math, to be really high in this new tool. So I wanted them to see the different ways that they could take it on. And then I gradually released and let them take on the work. Finally, we share solutions. So each of the teams will have all their work and how they got to their solution, but we'll just also have a solution comparison, because regularly they don't come to the same solution. And at the end of the JamBoard, in kind of discussing, after we've watched the third act and we know how long it took, I talk about, were there any light bulb moments in the problem solving process? And a light bulb moment is, oh my God, aha. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, and then I saw that. Or it's sometimes I name a light bulb moment. So sometimes I take a screenshot of some of their work and I bring it to the light bulb moment page and I say, why do you think this was a light bulb moment? And it's almost like the favorite no routine. Often I'm highlighting where a student or group of students went awry and what lessons we can learn from that process. And I'm trying to make the process of problem solving as valuable to learn from our mistakes as our successes. And that's the really important part of the light bulb moment. So now in your agenda are a ton of, well, let's go to, I think let's look at this one, the dominoes one together, but I want to just show how, so you're going to get some time to kind of explore. And on part 4, there is the name of the task. And I just chose some from last year that I just think were really interesting. So the name of the task, the link to the actual task, which you may want to go see because it's helpful to know what was the Act 1 video that they watched that they were talking about. What is the solution to this problem? Then some notes about kind of what happened in this particular Jamboard, because each one was like a little bit different. Like the Sweet Tart Hearts one was so hard that I had to think about what are some teamwork awards that I can kind of give for the hard work that they're putting in. And the clapper one was our most accurate one, and almost every group got almost exactly the answer. And the dominoes was our least accurate one. We were like all over the place. So let's look at the dominoes one. And then on the other side is the link to the Jamboard that has the actual student work that my students did last year. So you can see they're saying, I wonder how long it took to set up. We wondered that too. How long will it take for them to knock all of them over? How long will it take for the dominoes to be knocked down? Did he have any failed attempts? So the same things that you guys wondered. How many dominoes in total? How many dominoes got knocked down in Act 1? Will the curves be slower or faster? I thought that was such a great question. And some of their noticings. Maybe it was 100 dominoes. The time stopped at 50 milliseconds. We really had to talk about, was that milliseconds? Then, so there's some discussions about time, like 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So they also felt like he didn't stop the time correct. Curves seem to have less dominoes than on the straight line. It seemed like one side of the dominoes train is longer. So it takes about half a second for 5 or 6 dominoes. They really played around with Act 1 a lot. So then they've got their estimate, and I always organize them in this number line fashion so that they can kind of see the scope of the range of their estimates. Again, this is to like devalue the process of being right. It's not about being right. It's about processing and understanding the problem. So they came up with they had already asked the big question. We had a lot of discussion about time. So one student really wanted to share the idea of a picosecond. And honestly, I had to look up what a picosecond was, but she kind of elevated herself in describing a picosecond to students. And although it's not at all relevant to this math problem, it's an interesting conversation that gets kids thinking like, oh, there's more to math than just problems and procedures. You can see that like I had been challenging them a ton about coming up with what's a reasonable too high. Like, don't make the funny answer that it's like a year, because that doesn't help our estimates. And so you can see their estimates are getting kind of closer together. There's still the funny answer, like the picosecond is the funny answer, but Here's our strategy conversation. And then students actually really did a ton of work. So sometimes you'll see students have multiple students thinking on a board, and that's because the team separated and thought about it differently and came together and discussed and didn't get to an agreement. So like E over here used a ratio table and is really convinced that it's going to be 7 and 1400 seconds, where actually both of them got to 7 and 1400 seconds. Sorry. This one, 3 different solutions, and these, because their team split into partners. So this was a partner, this was a partner, and this was a partner. This partner pair really didn't know what to do with the information. And so they took the 119 total dominoes and multiplied by the 12, the group of 12 that was shown in Act 2, and got this answer of 1,428. This actually becomes the light bulb moment that we talk about. Sometimes the thinking is not as mathematical. So like she felt like there isn't a way we can get really accurate. So let's just be rounding and estimating and give an about answer. And I don't discourage that, because that is useful problem solving in real life. We have another kind of interesting choice for problem solving. This kind of shows them, look, the answers are all over the board. And in the light bulb moment, there's so many good conversations that come out if you make making a mistake like a really cool thing. So this was a moment that could have defeated these girls, because they actually worked really hard to do 119 times 12 and felt strong about their computation, and their computation is accurate, right? So some of the light bulb moments are, you have to look back in the details of the problem. You have to trust the information that's given. They practiced their math, was what one of the students said about this. Like, yeah, they did really accurate 3-digit by 2-digit multiplication. That is strong work. Saying that it's okay to slow down if you've pulled the wrong numbers. Maybe you need to go back and read the problem. And then this idea that there can be lots of real life factors at play in real life calculations. So like real life has real other things in play. This problem was so challenging that I rewarded students with some time to play. So they took out 10 dominoes and tested a theory on their own. So can you impact spacing or can you impact the speed by spacing them? Does that curve slow it down or speed it up? And they kind of tried to race each other and see who could get their dominoes to fall the fastest. And that was that 3-act task. So now I'm gonna give 15 minutes, 5 to 5:15, to just explore some of the other tasks. The clapper video is pretty mind-blowing, and the Pringle Ringle is funny. The Pringle Ringle, I will note, that was actually my 5th and 6th graders we practiced the Pringle Ringle problem together, but it's a very simple subtraction problem. We actually went to a 1st grade classroom in our school, and each of my 4th and 5th graders were like a team captain, and we divided the students up among them, and we taught this Jamboard routine to the 1st graders with them as the captains, and the 4th and 5th graders kind of like listened to the 1st graders thinking and represented on the Jamboard the way I had started with them. So I had listened to their thinking and represented on the Jamboard. Now in the full circle towards the end of the year, we went to the 1st grade class and they became the ones that were doing it. And it was really, really powerful, to the point that we're planning many more visits to younger classrooms this year using this Jamboard routine as a way to connect older mathematicians, younger mathematicians, and create a consistent routine across the whole school.
I definitely went and looked at the rest of the dominoes.
Oh yeah. It's really the desire and need to see act 3 is so real in these. Like they'll be like, come on, why can't you show me act 3? I'm like, this team's still working. I can't show it yet.
Well, and I'm sitting here going, okay. Anyway, y'all have to go look at act 3 if you haven't. I'm going, I want to know more. I want to figure this out. I want to know more. But I love the process. I've never seen 3-act things. This is brand new to me.
Oh my gosh, I'm
and now I'm like so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I came to this one.
Oh, yay.
Because it's brand new to me. So because I'm with a lot of littles and I'm K-5, but I'm like, oh man, this is so engaging for 5th graders. That for me, I have a highly marginalized set of kids anyway. So I'm just like, this is the kind of talking that I want in classrooms. This is the kind of thing that encourages math talk and encourages, you know, flexibility of thought. And that's what we need, because we have such rigidity and we have teachers who are just breaking free of that. We must teach this specific way. I'm a math coach, by the way. And so for me, it's exciting that my teachers have been embracing that we're doing more math talk, we're doing more math menu, we're doing more, you know, more. That's more, that's less, actually. Less talking to students and more talking with students and more student talk. And this just encourages that. So I'm so glad I came.
Yeah, you should. I would show, like, do one with your teachers that you coach as a way to like get them excited about it. Like the Pringle Ringle, honestly, for K2 teachers, you do the Pringle Ringle problem with them and they're like, I am on board, because that structure is so freaking cool that kids will die over it, and they do.
I particularly love, I've been thinking a lot about productive struggle, and I love the tasks that everyone in the room struggles with. And sometimes that is a particularly uncomfortable experience for kids who don't often struggle with your curriculum, like your grade level curriculum. And then these can really sort of be one of those, you know, equity pieces where everyone has a chance to have to feel that uncomfortable but really important feeling of struggle. But everyone can also have an entry point. So, you know, it's not just totally futile.
Yeah.
Erin, do you ever, have you ever like prepared extra scaffold materials ahead of time if you know certain students will need even more information than that it will be provided in task 2?
Yep. So there's a donut problem that's this is just a really good example of doing this. So there's a donut problem where you're figuring out how many donuts are in this massive Krispy Kreme box. It's like out of control how massive it is. And it's a really challenging problem. And I often do it with students who are, so I do it with mixed groups of kids, and if there are students who are struggling with multiplication and thinking about arrays, there's actually like another version. There's like some of the authors, and Graham Fletcher is one that does it well. They'll say like, here's one act 2, and here's a more accessible act 2. And so I'll sometimes share the act 2 that's designed for the grade level with everyone. And then as I watch a student kind of check out because it's too hard, I pull a small group and say, here's a different way to think about the Act 2 information. And it's actually the more accessible version. If those aren't provided, because they're not always provided, sometimes they are. The donut one is like a really great example, because the accessible Act 2 gets some kids into the problem that never would have been in the problem otherwise. I do sometimes create like either a question that I know will lead to like a really good thinking point, like starting point, or an additional piece of information that I think that would be helpful for a particular student.
Thanks.
You'll also see like slight variation in each one. So like in the nectarine problems, students were really wondering what is a nectarine. Like there was like a lot of questions about the fruit in general. So the final slide of that, we found, I found a nectarine information link, and we looked at, I put the link into another browser. We read the information about nectarines. We shared things that we were like really shocked by. And that's not math related at all, but it's honoring their questions, right? And honoring their questions is math related, because so often we pose the questions and ask them to follow. So rarely do we let them pose the questions and follow from there. So sometimes there are just like little extra, the Sweet Tart Hearts one was so challenging and the teams got so frustrated with each other. I added in some team awards at the end to just like really hammer home some of the teamwork things that I was seeing. So kind of as each one goes through, you recognize the need or see maybe like a slight variation that you might do because of that particular problem. Okay, let's do our final part, because the other part of Jamboard is there's some classroom management that you do have to consider. So in part 5, there's the link to our final Jamboard together, and this is going to be just some tips about how do you help kids use this tool properly. So go ahead and jump into that Jamboard. And it doesn't matter which slide you drop Post-its in. If you have an idea or thought for either one, and then I will add some of my lessons learned from last year as well. So one of my questions is, what are helpful tips when teaching students how to use Jamboard? So there's an element of, if you're going to use this tool, how are you going to teach students to also use it with you? And the other question is, what are some tricks to help students not get distracted by the features of Jamboard? So if you have used Jamboard, go ahead and take the next 3 or 4 minutes to drop a couple stickies in to either slide of what might be helpful. All right, so let's start at helpful tips for teaching students to use Jamboard. Show them with the view access and then give them editor access. Then when you want them to chat again, take editing access away. So so the Jamboards that I gave you that are the participant ones we did today, so this one and the one where we were in the dominoes, you guys were all allowed to be editors of the Jamboard, which means you get use of all of these tools. So you can add the sticky, you can write on it, you can input images and shapes and text box and use the laser. When you're a viewer, which you were in the part 4 part of the agenda, you can't use any of the features of the Jamboard. So if students are getting distracted by the features, you can simply remove their editing access and change them to be a viewer instead, and then you can't do those features anymore. So typically the laser is the one where I have to threaten students that they're going to become a viewer of the Jamboard. Like, if I see your laser again, you will be watching the Jamboard, not participating on the Jamboard. And it's way more fun to participate than to watch, right? So that idea that they don't have to have access to the tools all the time is a really important part of it. Ask open-ended questions and let them play freely. Set the parameters of what you want for the task, like stickies only, all stickies stay in the right direction, only the teacher moves stickies. Nice. So I love that idea. It kind of goes with this idea: assign every student a page and then let them see what they can do. But this yellow sticky is even saying like, assign one of the tools and let them really discover it, which I love. Play on it in a non-academic way first. Totally. Know your students' devices, not just yours. Students have iPads at our school. Yeah, and I think you can still access it on an iPad as long as you are in your, because it's a Google, it's a part of the Google Drive tools. So as long as you can access Google Drive, you can access Jamboard. And the other one I would add is the projecting the Jamboard up on the board, and you're totally in control of it before you even share it with students. So the first teaching of it for me was it projected with them looking at it, and they didn't even go into the Jamboard at all. And then they went into the Jamboard as viewers, right? And then they went into the Jamboard as editors. So they don't have to have full access all at once. They can access, it just looks different. Any other questions or thoughts about teaching students how to use it? Awesome. So tricks to help students get not distracted by the features. So agree that you only move or resize your own stickies, or only teacher moves stickies. That's such a big one. The resizing of stickies, like there is always the kid that does this, right? Like it's really annoying. So totally making a rule about touching other people's stuff, or the stickies particularly. There's also a really cool tool with the stickies that I use. So if you pull up a sticky note and write into it, hi y'all, you won't see my sticky note show up on this Jamboard until I click save. So if you want all students to provide an answer without seeing each other's answers, you can say, everyone pull up a sticky note and write your answer in the sticky note, but do not click save until I tell you to. And then everyone has their answer privately on their sticky note in this view. And when I say, okay, guys, click save, all the sticky notes pop up onto the screen at exactly the same time. What's annoying is they all will pop up right on top of each other. Like they'll all be on this hi y'all sticky, but you just move them around and all of a sudden all their answers are there. It's such a great tool for when you want them to share their thinking without seeing other people's thinking. You do have to address the pointer feature. So the pointer feature is down here. It's the last tool. It makes like a laser kind of design on the Jamboard as you play around with it. I let students play around with it for a day because it's also the most like alluring tool. But then you do have to put some limits on it because students can get so distracted by the pointer that they're doing nothing else. And then the other thing, so the pointer, the thing I discovered about the pointer is you won't see my pointer activity. You see it now on my screen, but you won't see it come up on the Jamboard until I stop doing it. And then it will come up on your shared Jamboard. So like there's this weird lag that happens between the pointers on each other's shared screen that they just take advantage of once they figure it out. So the pointer honestly is the thing I had to like manage the most. And then let students personalize their own pages, but not touch other pages. So I showed team pages, but I've also made Jamboards where I put a name on each page, and that's your page. And then students can personalize it. So I have students like input images and say, I love, oh no, it's not from there. Like Google image search, I love Pikachu. I don't know how to spell Pikachu. Okay, and maybe the background of their slide all of a sudden has this massive picture of Pikachu, and then everything else they bring forward, right? Like, because you can order stuff. So I can put the Pikachu as all the way to the back, and some of the students just like opened up an image all the way on their slide. I can't do it on that one. And this was just the background of their slide. And I don't care that they're showing who they are on their slide, but if they were to then change the background of someone else's slide, that would not be okay with me, right? Like, so you just have to think about what are the parameters around what they can do and what feels disrespectful to other people's learning. Any questions about management techniques or struggles? The last one that I will tell you about that's really helpful, I forgot about this one, is this back button. So if I've put a ton of writing or something on this and I want to undo what I've done, without having to erase, this is particularly helpful with the writing tool. Instead of taking the eraser and trying to erase where I did all those scribbles, I can just do the back button and it will undo what I just did last, and it will undo everything that I did. So I'm undoing all of my actions, but I'm not undoing any of yours, right? So the undo only relates to what I did in the Jamboard, not to what anyone else did in the Jamboard. But if you did a ton of writing with the tool, instead of taking the time to erase it, sometimes it's easier just to undo it with the back undo arrow. The last thing I want to say is that I did want you guys to have a starting point. So I gave you a link to a blank version of this 3-act task Jamboard. And it will force you to make a copy so that you can start playing around and like make your own template the way you want. Plus, you'll still have this agenda and access to all of these examples. So hopefully it can help start drive your own practice and playing around with this. And that is all I have for you guys. Katie, is there any closeout info that I'm missing?
Just a reminder that in order to get your conference certificate, you have to fill out the survey that you'll get at the end of in December after the 3rd conference date. So we hope to see you back in November and December, and please follow us on social media, join the challenge if you want to, but either way, we're sharing lots of great ideas like this from all of our facilitators on social media. So it's a great way to get some little glimpses into some of these things. We just recently shared one of your blog posts, Erin, on Instagram.
Oh, sweet.
And I think maybe an image of your dog.
Yep. Ozzy
Yeah.
definitely has some features in the blog.
So thank you to everyone. And Erin, thank you. That was really great.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you. Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate you being here.